All right, welcome in. It's football. It's Pat Imig, and it's pro football guru Russell Baxter joining the party as we head into week 6. A lot of more unpredictability this past weekend. Historic game with the Seahawks and the Buccaneers, which saying that out loud is just kind of weird. But that's the way the NFL is today. So let's start with that, not necessarily to look back at that game, but the two quarterbacks, there was a lot of, great nostalgic stats running around about how the combination of Mayfield and Darnold and all the things that they did. But as I look at some of the best teams right now, Russell, in the NFL through 5 weeks, and still a long ways to go, but I think we're both in agreement that Tampa Bay is legit and Seattle. But you've got Baker Mayfield at quarterback. You've got Sam Darnold at quarterback. And then at Indianapolis, another team that we both like, you've got Daniel Jones at quarterback. So I guess really what I'm learning this year about the great quarterback play is that you can't judge a guy's career after the first 2 years, right? I mean, so what do you make of, I guess, I don't even know if it's fair to call it a resurgence because they're all really young players still.
Yes.
But just kind of blank canvas for you. What do you make of what we're seeing with those three quarterbacks in general?
Well, I've had a theory about this. Not necessarily these three, but just the quarterbacks in general. Back in the day, which I'm allowed to say because I was back in the day, you used to draft a quarterback. He didn't necessarily start from day one. Some did, but some didn't. Sometimes they sat for a while. They sat for a while. And if they did play Pat, there was always a theory it would take 4 or 5 years. And then this guy, Dan Marino, came around and he ruined it for everyone. Okay. He had a respectable rookie year because he didn't wind up starting till like week 5 or week 6. And then, I mean, you could make a case still to this day, his 1984 season, 48 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 5,084 yards, without just the numbers, just the eye test. He did things that year. I mean, it was astonishing to watch. And now, well, okay, let's throw the guy in here. And then free agency came around. And then a salary cap came around. And I think it changed the way quarterbacks got developed. I think teams had an opportunity to ditch them. Baker Mayfield, reclamation project. Sam Darnold, even a bigger reclamation project. Daniel Jones, the same way. Geno Smith was out of sight, out of mind for the most part after bouncing around the league. And then he wound up going to back-to-back Pro Bowls with the Seahawks. Now he's really struggling right now with the Raiders. I'm curious to see what they do. But maybe, just maybe, it still takes longer to develop a quarterback than people want to admit.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Rodgers actually did sit for 3 or 4 years.
3 years. He sat 3 years. So
which at the time that was kind of crazy too.
Right. And then, but that's the Packers' philosophy, because then they had Jordan Love sit for a couple of years. So they always got their guy well in advance. Remember, they traded for Brett Favre. They didn't draft Brett Favre. He was drafted by the Falcons. And apparently, I guess Jerry Glanville had no use for him. Good move, Jerry. I'm going
to interrupt you. I do miss the really colorful coaches of that era. I was watching old Jim Mora is famous, for the playoffs thing, but like those of us that really know Jim Mora, his post-practice press conferences are just the thing. They're just gold. Between him, Glanville, I was always a huge fan of Parcells too, just his, mic'd up sound bites. So that's just a little divergent path.
Oh, that's okay.
We'll get back on the track, but I do miss the colorful coaches. Art Shell also just completely authentic and off the cuff, and they don't care. They're just here to coach.
You go Mike Ditka for sure was that way. My favorite Mike Ditka press conference, I think he was in the middle of a rant and said, "Are you okay, Mike?" And he said, "What do you care?" You can't get better than that.
Right.
What did they care? I had a soft spot I have a soft spot in my heart for Sells. I've gotten to know him over the years, worked with him a couple of times at ESPN, still stay in touch and so on. Great. I could listen to him talk football all the time.
Yeah, he was entertaining. I could definitely see that. So a couple of the names we mentioned in our intro with the quarterbacks came from, well, at least Geno Smith did, played with the New York Jets. A lot of quarterbacks go to the New York Sam Darnold, of course, New York
Yes.
Jet. So rather than focus on what's wrong on the field with the Jets, I think is it fair to say that their problems are more front office based? Because I was just looking at some stuff yesterday, and they got rid of Robert Saleh last year when the defense was still playing pretty good. I didn't understand that firing, and then you go off in the offseason and you hire another defensive coach. It just seems like it seems like that's dysfunction, and then that's where these good quarterbacks, these rookies, these young guys who get thrown into the fire. Not only are they thrown into the fire, they're done so in an organization that's completely dysfunctional. So is that front office, is that the most dysfunctional in the league, you think?
I think it goes higher up than that, Pat. I think there's a reason the Jets have the longest active playoff stretch drought. I'm sorry, longest off playoff drought. The last time they played in the playoff game, um, Mark Sanchez was the starting
I
quarterback.
was waiting for that. Yeah.
Uh, for Rex Ryan's team, they played the AFC Championship game at Pittsburgh and lost. Were Gave up a lot of points early, rallied, couldn't get it done. And I talked about that 2 years ago because the irony was if the Jets would have beaten the Steelers in the playoffs in the AFC Championship game and went to the Super Bowl, guess who they would have played? Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. So they waited a while and they wound up getting Aaron Rodgers 13 years later. So,
Day
and
late and
by
a
the way,
dollar
Aaron
short.
Rodgers looks like Aaron Rodgers was there for 2 years, barely played the first year, played it his last 10 games last year with the Jets. He was pretty respectable. He's in a different environment. So it's kind of fascinating. But when your organization is that inept, I mean, they haven't won the AFC East since 2002. That was the first year of realignment.
Wow.
Again, they've won a playoff game since 2010. Um, I was actually talking about this with back and forth texting with Chris Berman a couple when the Jets played the Buccaneers this year. Pat, um, who's the head coach of the Buccaneers? Todd Bowles. When was the last time the Jets had a winning season? 2015 under Todd Bowles. They didn't make the playoffs. They lost out in the tiebreaker. So listen, the Jets are all over the league. They're just not with the Jets.
Right. Right. Great harvesters of talent, but they just sell the
Yes.
crops, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so the Jets on Sunday morning, I believe, yeah, they're going to be, I guess, hosting the Broncos. Not really hosting, but they're gonna. That's another London game, I believe. So Denver, we talked about a lot last week. What did you think of Bo Nix in that victory? I felt like he still missed some throws and he's still a work in progress, but I feel like, again, the system that he's in, the coaches that he has, that I think that team, I think whoever wins the AFC West this year is going to be like 10-7 or 11-6, because I think them and Kansas City and San Diego are just going to beat up on each other.
Well, yeah, and I think the word beat up is exactly the word you're looking for there too. The one thing about a Sean Payton team, there's a certain lack of, I don't mean this in a bad way. There's a certain arrogance to them. And a
Yeah.
confidence at the same time. And uh, they hung in there and they hung in there and they hung in there. Now, I will say this because running the football is a big thing for me. And to me, it's as much about carries as it is about yards. You go back and that's something I've been tracking for 2 decades. Look at games, and this includes kneel downs too, Pat. So I'm not trying to fool anybody. Teams that run the ball win a lot of games. Teams who finish a game with more running plays than the other team win a lot more games. And when you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're sitting at home with a 14-point lead and you run the ball, I had to look this up because someone said it, and I thought they were being sarcastic. They ran one running play in the fourth quarter last week.
Insanity.
One. I ran from here to the kitchen and equaled that total. Okay. And
What'd
and
you
and had
get?
a longer game too. Huh?
What did you get?
Oh, shrimp for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I already had my wings. I had to have some shrimp. But
Okay.
anyway, I didn't understand that at all. It was like Miami's up 17-0 at Carolina. They finished the game. Now they're up 17 against a team not known for its dynamic offense, already turned over the ball twice. Had they finished the game 14 carries for 19 yards.
That's
What
crazy.
are you doing? Just, I mean, what do you just, I mean, you just abandon. You know who that reminds me of? It's probably somebody you know very, very well. Mike Martz.
I knew you were going to go there.
That's Mike Martz football. Oh, you know what? We're down 10-0. That's it. We're just going to throw it the rest of the way.
Right. We have Marshall Faulk and a young Steven Jackson. Let's just keep slinging it with Mark Bulger.
Yeah, yep. Well, I mean, the Super Bowl against the Patriots, it was almost like they abandoned it, pretty early. So,
So
um,
what do you attribute the running Philadelphia's running, like we've documented, they're built for the trenches. They don't really miss in the draft. They're probably top to bottom, regardless of how they're playing when healthy, probably the best collection of talent, depth wise. So
mhm.
having said all that, was Sunday an aberration just because they're trying to get their receivers involved who are unhappy, or is there a reason that because it wasn't just this past week. I mean, that was 6 carries for Barkley, but previously he's not getting the ball as much anyway. So is there something they're not? What am I missing?
Well, I think they're missing continuity as an offensive coordinator. They go through them like I go through a bag of potato chips. They're always sitting there changing their offensive coordinator. They got a new offensive coordinator. I will also say this, and take this with a grain of salt. Um, this was the fourth game in a row that the Eagles played a team that was in the playoffs last year.
That's fair.
Kansas City, Rams, Buccaneers, Broncos. Okay, it wasn't like they had Bill Belichick's North Carolina Tar Heels on the schedule. Um, so I think that played a role as well. And these are all still good teams. Okay, Kansas City, whatever happened to them last night, but I mean the Rams, whatever happened to them last week. Tampa Bay, they're the only team to beat Tampa Bay this year. And I think in some ways that caught up with them a little and so on. I mean, they have a chance to. I would get worried if they struggle or lose to the Giants this week. It's a short week, but it's not a long road trip, obviously. And they pretty much own the Giants for a long time, but they lack balance. They're either throwing a lot and not running at all, or they're running a lot and they're not throwing at all. But Saquon Barkley's coming off a magical year. And if you were resting him these first 5 weeks, I get it. Okay. But now might be a good time. And yet, despite all that, they're in first place in the division and tied for the best record in
And
the
they'll
league.
still find ways to win games with their
Yes.
special teams. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So, uh, a game that we all knew would be just a moneymaker on the schedule when the odds makers made the schedule this year, Jaguars and Seahawks. I say that sarcastically, of course, but Jacksonville with the win over the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. They definitely look fast. They definitely they kind of reminded me of Detroit. I'm not talking about their offense. I just mean the speed on all across the field. But they also still look they still look like a young team that's inconsistent. A lot of the delay of game penalties, and then just not doing simple things when they should. But it looks like they've turned it around, at least to fight for a divisional title or a wild card spot.
Well, I think they had a lot of nerves last night. Okay, they are playing the reigning dynasty. I know that the Chiefs didn't win the Super Bowl last year, but they've been in 5 of the past 6. They've been in the playoffs every year since 2015. So that dynasty doesn't mean you have to win the title every year. You're on a 10-year playoff run. That was a step up for them last night, and I think they showed their nerves. But after they got down 14-0, they realized, you know what, we can do this, and they trailed most of the evening. That 99-yard interception return was one of the early plays of the year, considering what was going on in the game and who threw the pick. And just unflappable. I mean, early on, they came down the field and Trevor Lawrence tries to. I don't know why somebody on TV was calling it the tush push. That's not the tush push. Okay, that's the play that a couple years ago, when the Bengals and the Ravens, the ball popped up and Sam Hubbard ran it back 98 yards for a touchdown. That's what that play was. So, but they've hung in there. They're great at taking away the football, which was their Achilles heel last year. Um, Last year was the second time in 4 years, I might have told you this last week, that the Jaguars had 9 takeaways. That is tied for the second fewest in a single season in NFL history. They have 14 now in 5 games, 10 picks. So that's a big factor. But I like what you said about the speed. I think their speed on defense is even more impressive than
Yeah.
ATN and that Travis Hunter catch last night. I thought that was a big momentum switch as well. So they hung in there late in the game. It was Kansas City making, bad kickoff by Butker, a lot of penalties by them. Um, they looked like they looked like they knew it was getting away from them and they couldn't do anything about it.
Which is weird because, I think that
Yes.
the defense, the Chiefs defense has been their most consistent aspect, the
Yes.
last few years and especially through 4 weeks, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of weird because it's like, I still think the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs. That offense is looking more exciting and, it was just it was a very odd game, but it was entertaining. So, everybody wins.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll also say this. Maybe in the back of their mind after they did what they did to Baltimore the previous week and scored 37 points, maybe they felt like, oh, we're getting our act together, we're getting people back and so on. And then you go out and you realize how many people were scoring points on Baltimore. That would be everybody
Right.
except the Browns this year. So I mean, in their 4 losses, the Ravens have given up what, 41, 38, 37, and 38, 38, 37, and then 44. By the way, the Texans had never won in Baltimore until Sunday. They were 0-8.
The Rams, I believe, are going to Baltimore, or this week for week 6.
Yes.
Coming off a bye. So is it? I don't want to say nothing's a given in the NFL, but I feel like if you give that team a week to prepare for that defense, I would imagine it's very possible the Ravens still have 1 win after the game, after week 6.
I think it's possible too, and actually it'd be more than a week because they were the Thursday night game.
That's right.
At home
yeah,
when they lost to the 49ers and so on. So extra preparation. And that team is not a big mystery to Sean McVay. Remember, a couple of years ago, they went into Baltimore, lost a wild, I want to say 37-31 overtime game. So there's not going to be a lot of big surprises there for Sean, considering it's an interconference game. Much like the Lions on Monday night a couple weeks ago, they had faced the Ravens pretty recently too. So they look lifeless on defense and obviously mistake prone. They don't have Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry does. After week 1, he looks nothing like Derrick Henry from last year. And and I know they're missing people up front on the defensive line, but to watch them give up the rushing yards that they're giving up. Now, last year, they were good against the run. They were horrific against the pass. Now they're just horrific against the run and the pass.
Something that I never thought I'd hear anybody say, at least while Harbaugh's still there. So we were talking also about the Chiefs Sunday night. That there's a very good chance that after week 6 that they'll be 2-4. They could very well be 3-3, of course, too, because they host the Lions. So if the Chiefs go to 2-4, does that concern you at all, or do you still think that they're ready to go to the playoffs?
It would only concern me if the Chargers and the Broncos keep winning. That would be the concern. Now,
So
I've
who are
also
the
seen the
Chargers
Chargers.
then?
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, Jim Harbaugh has proven he can beat any team in the AFC West. Now he has to prove he can beat any team outside the AFC West. So that changed real dramatically. Denver had a couple of screwy losses, but a loss is a loss.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, that's a confidence builder. What they did, being down 2 touchdowns and scoring the last 18 points of the game against Philadelphia, and they were all over Jalen Hurts. They were all over him. They really their defense, which when they played the Colts, and maybe the Colts are a lot better than anybody thought they would. They played the Colts. They did not look like one of the best defensive units in the league. And the Colts offensive line and Jonathan Taylor will do that to you. Don't get me wrong, but they've kind of settled it. It's just these first five. It used to be the first 2 games were like extra preseason games. Now I think it goes deeper than that, and teams trying to figure out how good they might be. I mean, this is the first time since 2014, I believe it is, that a team didn't get to at least 5-0. I
That's
have a track. I have the whole Super Bowl history of the last team to lose, and I think it was 2014 where no one. In fact, that I think that year 3 teams got to 3-0. So that was it. So it. I think it just depends on what happens with them. The thing about the loss last night, and I said I think this way because it's important to think this way. That was a conference loss for the Chiefs. Okay.
right.
And, what happens if it's down to Jacksonville and Kansas City for the 7th playoff spot? What happens? I'm not saying it's going to. It's one thing if you lose to Detroit and you lose to Philadelphia, who are NFC teams. It's another thing when you're maybe jockeying for position. But yeah, that was. I thought the Chiefs. I didn't think the Chiefs were back. But I didn't know if this was again. I mean, I saw Jacksonville go into Cincinnati, and that's the last game Cincinnati won. So who the hell can figure this stuff out? It's damn near. I mean, listen, if you're a betting person, when you just bet all the home teams last week straight up, you were 4-10.
Right. I feel like the home field advantage in the NFL has kind of lost luster
It
over the
has.
course of
It has.
time. Is that,
Mhm.
do you have stats to, or
I don't have it
can
in
you,
front of me, but I've been tracking those since the merger and so on. And yeah, the last couple of years, there was the COVID year. I think it was either below 500 for home teams or broke even. And then people were, oh, it's the COVID year. And then the following year, it was the identical same number. I'll have to dig those
wow.
out for you. So yeah, I mean, it didn't matter that people were back in the stands. It didn't matter. And you see that in playoffs too. Playoffs aren't, it used to be you put up some pretty gaudy numbers as far as home teams in the playoffs. They've been so up and down. I'll say up and down, not consistently bad or consistently good. So, but listen, these young guys who play this game now play in a lot of them play in bigger stadiums than they play in the NFL. So I don't think they get really daunted. And
Yeah.
free agency free agency, let's be honest, it really changed the aspect of what an NFL rivalry is.
Good. Yeah. These all points make sense. So, yeah, anybody who plays in the Big Ten or SEC in college, it's like getting to the pros at that point. It's like, yeah, I've dealt with it worse than this. That's a good point. And the
Right. And
game is,
probably now, and I'm sorry, and probably now making more money.
right. Right. I don't know though. There's some of them are making more than
Yeah.
that in college legally this time. I don't know
Yes.
if you saw either, but about an hour or two ago, Joe Flacco, the Browns traded Joe Flacco to the Bengals, a rare divisional trade in season. Does that change anything for the Bengals other than the fact that their receivers might get the ball a little bit more? I mean, I still feel like that team is just beat. Like they haven't taken care of their line play in 5 years. So I don't see that really changing other than just maybe a little excitement here and there.
Well, I think you'll see more downfield passing because we know Joe Flacco has an arm.
Right.
But he's an equal opportunity quarterback. He spreads the ball around to the offense and the defense, as we well know. And I guess, and who knows, maybe in 2 years Joe will play for the Steelers. That way he can complete the four bagger
The AFC North.
within the AFC North. Yeah. So, but they're at Green Bay this week. So, good luck with that. And then Green Bay obviously going to be well rested. And Green Bay, it's funny. Green Bay hasn't won a game since week 2. Now I know they were off last week, but remember they lost to the Browns and then they tied the Cowboys. So a lot of people were very excited about the way the Packers started out. They thumped Detroit, and their defense and rose up in their first 2 games of the season. They look like they turned the corner that way, and then they give up 40 points at Dallas. So I'm not sure what we're gonna see from them either. But what's funny about last week, Pat? There were a couple of teams. Pittsburgh was one. San Francisco was one. Um, San Francisco won, and everybody else in the division lost. Pittsburgh didn't even play, and everybody else in the division lost. New England beat Buffalo, and the Jets and Miami lost. So, and who would have ever thought? I haven't gone back and looked at this. Every team in the AFC South won in
Wow,
week
that's
5.
surprising. It
Yeah,
helped in part by the Arizona miscue, which Arizona and Indianapolis play this week. So what's the over/under on dropped potential touchdowns before the end zone? Because I believe it was the Colts that also did it the week before.
Yes, it was. This was they should put them both those players at the 50 and see if they can get into the end zone.
So,
Someone's going to have some fun with that.
Shouldn't there be I think if this happens one more time, I honestly think that teams are going to start putting, provisions into contracts or something, because it's inexcusable. I mean, I remember watching Monday Night Football, years ago, and Deshaun Jackson did it. I think that was in the McNabb era and Andy Reid, of course. But that's just demoralizing. That cost Arizona the game. I mean, there's no way Tennessee wins.
Yeah, and it cost the Colts the game.
Yeah, at worst the Colts are tied.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. And that poor kid then got called for a holding penalty on the Jonathan Taylor touchdown run that negated that. So, as Eugene Levy said in the movie Splash, what a week I'm having. And
right.
Yeah. But I think that's they're called, by the way, they got to call it the Deshaun Jackson rule. If they do that, you got to put that in the contract, the Deshaun Jackson clause. So, we've also seen, goofy. Yeah, I remember Duriel Harris for the Dolphins spiked the ball in the end zone on a Monday night and blew out his knee. So
wow.
Just again, be Franco Harris or be Barry Sanders. Just hand the ball to the official, and that way he can hand it back to you, and you can take it home for a souvenir. And so both these guys had a chance, I think, to score their first NFL touchdowns. And who knows, the kid from the Colts, I don't think he barely saw the field last week. So not that they needed him against the Raiders, but I'm with you. You got to do something about it. It's just it's funny. Some of these players have more success running into the end zone and celebrating without the ball than they do running with the ball into the end zone because they never crossed the end zone. So instead of the celebrations, why don't you choreograph how to get the ball into the end zone?
Well, that's exactly right, and that's where I think it was Greg Olson from Fox Sports who said, he was like, I'm always a straight-laced player. I was a straight-laced player, and I didn't have time for that stuff. And he's like, I can't speak. He's like, I can't speak to these guys, but I can tell you that there's a lot of these younger players that they spend all week thinking about what they're going to do when they score a touchdown. So, that right there
I totally agree with that.
Is an indictment.
Listen, you don't run into your teammates into the end zone, all 11 of you. One of them pretends he's got a bowling ball, and the other 10 guys fall down. And tell me you did that at the spur of the moment.
Right. At least he made it to the end zone on that one.
Yes.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who are right now just through week 5? Who's the top? What are your like top 5 teams? We're not going to call it a power rankings. We can call it guru power rankings if you want, but like if you're just like looking at the 5 best teams through 5 weeks, who would they be?
I'd have to put Detroit number one. They shook off that week 1 loss to the Packers. They're all, oh, they have a new coordinator. Okay, well,
It's working
they
out
are
so far.
scoring at will. They're so good on the offensive line. Defensively, I think they're a little better. The problem with Detroit defensively in recent years was more health than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be hopefully for them, they're able to stay healthy. Um, I don't know if it necessarily. I have to put Tampa Bay pretty high. Um, I know they gave one up to the Eagles and almost pulled it out anyway. No margin of error. I mean, they managed to win by the skin of their teeth. Another, they get a win on the final play of the game. Sam Darnold has a brilliant game. He doinks one over off a teammate's helmet, I think it was, or someone's helmet.
That was
Pick,
an impressive
and they
win though.
go
I
home.
agree with you. Not
Yeah.
only going to Seattle, that's always tough, but without the running back, without Mike Evans, I mean, that was a big boy win.
Well, I will say this: Jason Light is one of the great GMs in this league, and it's a guy you just don't hear a lot about. So they don't have Mike Evans, and Emeka Ibuka. Uh, early on, looks like the best rookie in the league.
Yeah.
And I think here's the thing about Bucky Irving, Pat, that kind of surprised me from people. They were all talking about Bucky Irving; he's going to miss the game. The year before Bucky Irving's emergence, Rashad White was doing all the things that Bucky Irving did. And Rashad White was back to that role on Sunday. He's a guy who can run, he's a guy who can catch. So credit Jason Light. He lost Chris Godwin for a while. Now Mike Evans is down. Godwin's, I think, back. They have great tight ends. They've always taken care of their offensive line. There's a reason they have the longest active playoff streak in the NFC, even longer than the Eagles. They've been to the playoffs every year this decade. They won a wild card, the Super Bowl as a wild card, and they've won the NFC South 4 years in a row.
Yeah. The complete opposite. We've gone full circle. That's the complete opposite of the Jets having
Yes.
in a lot of ways.
Well,
who? So
and,
who?
and by
So
the
you
way,
got
since we're going to do a correlation with the Bucks and the Jets, the last time the Jets won the AFC East was the first year the Bucks won the Super Bowl with John Gruden
two
and Brad Johnson,
and Brad
2002.
Johnson.
Yeah. So
That was
and
that
Keyshawn
was the
Johnson and everybody else.
inherit.
So
Yeah, the
I got
inheritance
to
of
throw the
Tony
Colts
Dungy's
up.
defense.
Yes, I got to throw the Colts up there in the top 5 because of the way they're playing on both sides of the ball. And even though they lost the Rams game, and then, listen, they gave up the 2-2 Atwell touchdown. I mean, there was nobody around him at all. But to go into that building where I don't think it played very often, it showed me a lot. And they've hovered around 500 under Steichen. Okay, but maybe this year is the year that they break through. I don't think, just going off the top of my head, they haven't gotten to Jacksonville or Houston yet. So that's going to be fun. And Houston, I think, maybe have righted their ship. I know it was Baltimore. Can you imagine saying that? I know it was Baltimore.
Right.
Okay, but they did win. They've given up the fewest points in the league. I don't think a lot of people realize that the Texans have given up the fewest points in the league. And for what it's worth, the last time an 0-3 team made the playoffs was the 2018 Houston Texans.
So the AFC South is the got 3 teams at least that's going to make for some interesting games, and compare that to the AFC North. It's like a topsy turvy world.
Well, the AFC North traditionally puts in 2, sometimes 3 teams.
Right.
And right now, I mean, the Browns and the Bengals and the Ravens all did Pittsburgh a favor last week. And, Baltimore loses by 34. Uh, double-digit losses. I thought Cleveland played a very, very good game against Minnesota, and at least in my eyes, Dylan Gabriel making his first start, he gets the ball out very quick, and he doesn't look like a guy who gets very rattled. And again, one game, but
Right.
I was kind of impressed with his comfort level in making his first NFL start.
So you have the Browns at number 4 on your power rankings.
No, I still think you got to put Philly in there, even though they've kind of you can't really figure out what they are. Um, and I want to give San Francisco credit because they've been a mash unit, and I guess their only loss to the Jaguars doesn't look so bad after
Right.
all. Plus, they've beaten every team in the division at least once already.
That's
So,
nuts.
yeah, Buffalo, you could debate them in Buffalo, but Buffalo's defense really worries me. And it worried
And
me even before the New England game. I don't know if you realized when they played the Saints, who had not won a game until last week, the Saints ran for 189 yards on the Bills defense in
yeah,
Buffalo.
and you've been preaching that since week 1. That was some of the stuff we talked about. I remember, and you said
Yeah.
I asked you what's something that people maybe might be surprised about with the Bills, and you just said it's still true now. So
Yeah.
if they can't fix that, then you don't want to say it's a wasted
Well, I don't know
season
how
for
you
Josh
fix it. I
Allen, but
mean, I don't know. Does somebody have Aaron, like Mean Joe Green's phone number and call him and I'm not going to say Aaron Donald, go get your sacks. But
right.
you need a big now. Listen, they don't have Milano, they don't have Ed Oliver, and that's they need them back desperately and so on. But remember, they spent their first 5 draft choices on defense in April. And that was the focus of their offseason. How can we have a defense that can beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? Because they've lost 4 playoff games to Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Wonderful. So let's close out with there's a Monday night doubleheader for week 6. Bears coming off of a bye. I think they've looked incrementally better. I think that Caleb Williams looks like he has hope with Ben Johnson there. I think the Commanders also, though, they just seem like a really rock solid team top to bottom. So we've got that game on Monday, and then the aforementioned Bills and the Falcons, who still trying to figure out Atlanta. I do feel like their defense is better than in previous years, but what should fans look for Monday night's doubleheader?
Well, Atlanta went out and got 2 pass rushers in the first round in April. And I remember they pounded J.J. McCarthy in the submission a couple of weeks ago on the Sunday night. They didn't play last week. Last time we saw them, they survived a shootout with Washington, but they're sitting at only at 2-2, and they were one of the unlucky teams because while they sat idly by, the Saints and the Panthers and the Buccaneers all won. So it's the polar opposite of some of the other divisions. Um, Bijan Robinson leading the team in rushing, leading the team in receiving. You want to talk about a team having trouble stopping the run. He's a big guy with a lot of speed, and to me, if Bijan's getting into the end zone, they can't have Bijan run for 150 yards and settle for a bunch of field goals. I will say that. So, how the
So that's
Bills
interesting. Yeah,
react off.
you've got that dynamic run game against that porous run defense that you're just talking about.
Yeah, but they've got to capitalize on it. And, um, you know, I'll be watching Philly and Buffalo were actually both. Buffalo has spent more time doing night games this year. I think this is the Bills' 4th night game already between Monday night, Sunday night, and Thursday night, you know? And I'll be curious to see them in Philadelphia. I'm always interested to see a team off its first loss of the season, how they handle it, because one loss can become 2 and 3. And then all of a sudden you're headed. I'm not saying they're both going to lose,
Right.
but that I've seen that happen. All of a sudden you start doubting yourself a little. And that's why watching the Chiefs on Monday night, you figured they'd go in the opposite direction, and it was hardly the case. In fact, as vaunted as their defense is, and I know one of it was a pick six, they wound up they gave up 31 points to the Jaguars.
Right.
So again, a pick six, I understand all that, but they gave up a lot of big pass plays downfield, and they looked like they had trouble with the speed of Travis Etienne at times.
That's the Pro Football Guru, Russell Baxter. Russell, always great to chat with you on a Tuesday or any day, really, talking about week 6 for this week. We will check in with you again next Tuesday. And do you have any messages for the people on your way out?
I'm trying to think if I have any wildly bold predictions this week. I guess I could go with Houston and Minnesota not losing because they're not playing. But
It's a big one.
no, I'll just like I said,
Houston's
I'll
going
be
to have
curious.
they're going to give up a lot fewer points this weekend too.
Yeah, that's true. I'll be curious to see how some of these teams like Kansas City and and Baltimore holding on for dear life right now, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, Detroit went in there a couple of years ago and beat them at Arrowhead Stadium. You remember that was the opening
Yeah.
Thursday night game of the season. A lot of people pointed to that as like a turning point for the Lions franchise. Uh, and that was off the defending Super Bowl champions. How does Baltimore right things? Can they get enough Stafford uh, interceptions or force some turnovers and so on? Kyle Van Noy. Uh, once it starts going south, you never know. Now, I will also say this: if Baltimore does uh, fall to 1-5, if memory serves, I want to say Andy Reid's Chiefs went 1-5 in I think 2015 and rebounded and made the playoffs. I hope I
So it's
have the year right.
all hope's not
Yes.
lost.
No. Yeah. Well, all hope's not lost like it used to be because you play 17 games now too.
Right.
That certainly helps. I think it's officially called the NFL Mulligan.
Might as well. I don't want to see
Yes.
them add a second mulligan. One mulligan's plenty for me.
Well, I think that's going to be inevitable because the one thing you've learned about the NFL, for them, it's a 20-game window. Okay. Back in the day, 14 games and 6 preseason games. I go back that far. And if you were the defending Super Bowl champion, Pat, you actually played a 7th preseason game against the college all-stars.
Wow.
Then it went in 78. It went from 16-4. Now we're 17-3. I think eventually it'll be 18-2.
That would make sense in
Yeah.
that regard.
I don't think any more than that.
Which also gives credence to your theory that you mentioned earlier, which is, it used to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks that you were kind of like figuring out your team, and now it kind of seems like it's 4 and 5 weeks.
Well, you would have to change how you prepare for a season. You would have to expand the rosters, I think, as well. And to a degree, they've done that. You're not on injured reserve for the whole year anymore. It's 4 weeks. You can put veterans on your practice squad. So there's a lot of shuffling in and out. They found a way. But I will say this: 5 weeks into the season, I don't think the football's been that bad, and we have seen some really entertaining, fun games.
I agree. It's been a fun 5 weeks so far.
Yeah,
So we will enjoy again this weekend, and we'll catch up next Tuesday.
you got it, sir.
All right. Thank you.